I'm Bob Lee. I'm the editor of the People's Tribune, for those of you who may not know me, and along with our sister bilingual publication, the Tribuna del Pueblo, we're happy to be among the sponsors of this series of very important webinars on the struggle for human rights along our southern border. This is the fourth in this series of panels, and I wanted to let you know that we are recording this discussion, and the recording will be posted later on the websites of the People's Tribune and the Tribuna del Pueblo. And with that, I'll turn it over to our moderator for this panel, Leno Rose-Avila.
Thank you. I want to tell you that I'm very excited. Can my picture come up or no? What do I have to do?
You're fine.
Oh, I'm fine. Everybody can see me. I can't see myself. So.
See your handsome face, yes.
Mentirosa. So my name is Leno Rose-Avila, and I'm part of this great coalition with the two newspapers and director of Building Bridges. And a lot of us came together from all over the country because we wanted to do a caravan from Texas to Tijuana, but the coronavirus got us. And so we sat down and we said, what alternative can we have? We said, well, why don't we do Zoom meetings from and visit the same areas we wanted to. And,
it was Hector's idea, wasn't it? Well, I'm muted.
Yeah, somebody's. And anyway, so what's important is that we're able to reach a lot of people from all over the country in this process. And today we have some very exciting voices. Two of the women I just met over the telephone and Zoom that we're going to be hearing from, but we have 5 very interesting speakers today. So the first one, and they're going to talk about 10 minutes and then try to save some time for the end for questions. So the first one is Tania Garcia. She's with Espacio Migrante. She's a lawyer, a PhD in sociology, coordinates the legal clinic for them in Tijuana. And they provide dignity, care, and humanitarian assistance for anybody, for the migrants that are there and people in the Tijuana area. So Tania, can you give us your introduction and talk?
Sure, thank you. Thank you all. It is so good to meet you in this new digital way. And thank you for the opportunity to share with you all we have been documented and the way we have worked. Well, for those who don't know what we do in Espacio Migrante, we are a non-profit organization. We work to create a safe and exclusive space for migrant community, but especially for children, young people, and families to receive a humanitarian and dignified care. We are located in Tijuana. This work with the community, because we have a small shelter, but we also have a lot of work with the community that had allowed us to know and live with them the changes in the U.S. immigration policies that have a really negative impact in the policies in Mexico, but also in the lives of the migrants that are seeking asylum in the US. And well, I think you know that since the creation of the MPP, the condition of the migrants in the city have become very complicated. Since they don't have information, they have to be listed in order to apply for asylum in the United States. And then when they finally do, they have to return to Mexico to await their process. And now, since COVID-19 and the closure of the border, this has represented a great challenge for them and for us as an organization, as we had to completely restructure the work that we usually did and find a new way to approach them and try to help. So we have identified several changes faced by immigrants during the pandemic. For example, with this border closure, asylum seekers are not being received on the metering, the list. And so the families that have been already in MPP, they have to wait indefinitely. So they have been abandoned by the US and Mexico governments because there is no programs for them to apply for some help, as these have an impact to all, but these communities have very special needs Most of them are undocumented. The ones on MPP have like a permission, but a permit, but this doesn't allow them to work. And so a lot of people have lost their jobs, and that means that their living conditions are at risk. So suspending the MPP hearings means the family have to wait longer, and families that were waiting for their last hearing in April or March, now they don't know when they can finish this process, and this has had a profound impact on mental health. So that is one of the things we have documented, the mental health. And in Tijuana, there are not much organization that can provide this kind of service. And also, for many people that have lost their jobs and have issues of housing and food security has been put at risk because there is no programs for the government. So we have been trying to work in alliance with some other organizations as the IOM and Al Otro Lado, Haitian Breed Alliance, and I know I'm forgetting a few, but we are trying to work in a program that we call Migrant Community Support for provide electronic like cards that to give them, and so they can go to the supermarkets and buy some food. We also have been working with the IOM as they have a filter hotel, which involves families and migrants passing a quarantine, and now they are being able to refer to shelters for safe entry in health matters, as healthcare is one of the biggest issues that we are worried about here in Mexico, because if they cannot have access in a regular time now with COVID, that healthcare is one of the most important things there. They should have guaranteed. Well, that's why we need to find new strategies to deal with this kind of problems. And also migrants have their own ways to try to go through all these challenges, as a lot of people have lost their homes and have to go to their networks like friendships to ask them to live with them. Meanwhile, they find another job and ensure an income and now have the possibility to pay rent and buy food. So these are the things that we have been dealing with. And about housing here in Baja California, there is no program, however, that help them to secure that. So they have to go to shelters, but also during the pandemic, most of the shelters closed these entries. So now with the filter hotel of the IOM, that now there is a possibility for them to be referred to a shelter. And of course, legal representation keeps being a problem here in Tijuana for their cases in the US. There was no easy access to it before the pandemic, and now it's even like worse, you know? And so a lot of people don't know what to do because they have to wait for a longer time. And they are really worried about their process, if they have been canceled or not. So we are trying to refer them to Al Otro Lado and Hayas. There are the two organizations that have legal advice for process in the US, but we know that they are with a lot of work. And well, here in Tijuana, as I am a Mexican attorney, I work with refugees or asylum seekers here in Mexico, but also because a lot of people now that they don't know how many more months they have to wait. So I'm working to ensure access to the right of education. So here in Tijuana, well, in the state of Baja California, there is a program for the Ministry of Education, And so we are working as a link between the migrant community and this Ministry of Education to ensure this access. So a lot of people before the pandemic, they weren't sure to enlist their kids to school because, well, they thought that they were gonna cross and they will be able to enlist them in the US. But now, as they don't know how much more time they have to wait, now they are willing to let the kids to go to school. But this is another kind of problem because as this is a new way, they have to work like a digital work. They have to have internet, or they have to have like a cell phone, the smartphone, or a computer, a tablet. And so we're trying to work with that kind of things, and also with mental health. Like these are two of our biggest concerns, because with or in regard to the e-wallets or these cards for the grocery shopping, we are working with some other organizations, and we have been able to make like a GoFound process and to get more resources to help families. But
Tania, you have 1 minute.
yeah, sure. Thank you. And so this had been a really difficult time for everybody, for the migrant community. But we are really glad that we have the opportunity to work in alliance with some other organizations and to try to dignify just a little bit that state of them here in Tijuana. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Tania. That was wonderful. Just so everybody's reminded, is we're trying to allow time at the end for questions. So if you put your questions in the chat line, they'll come to us. Now I'd like to introduce to you a woman I met a couple of years ago, Yolanda Varona, who's the director of Dreamers Moms. And she's a mother who has a daughter who is a dreamer in the United States, like a lot of other mothers. And she was deported during a difficult time in her life to Mexico without any support or anything. Yolanda, si tú hablas en unas frases, yo trato de traducir lo mejor que puedo, ¿verdad?
Sí,
So here's
claro.
Yolanda Varona.
Ok, hola a todos, gracias por invitarme. Mi nombre es Yolanda Varona y soy una mujer deportada.
I'm Yolanda Varona. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm a deported woman.
Soy madre de una dreamer y de un hijo ciudadano norteamericano.
She's the mother of a dreamer. Es una madre de. She's a mother of a dreamer and a son who are in the United States.
Hace 10 años fui deportada, los mismos 10 años que no he podido ver a mi hija, y pues bueno, ahora que han pasado los años, he logrado tener un poco de fortaleza para aguantar, y esa misma fortaleza me hizo crear un grupo para ayudar a más mujeres en mi misma situación.
She says it's been 10 years since she was able to be with her daughter or see her, and it's been a struggle, but she's been gotten strength from people, from herself, and that gave her the strength to be able to organize the Dreamers Moms, who include Dreamers Moms, and on other occasions, mothers who are deported of veterans. There's a lot of women that need support there.
Sí, nuestro grupo ayuda especialmente a madres deportadas, a mujeres migrantes y en ocasiones a algunos dreamers que han tenido que salir deportados. Nuestra meta principal es la reunificación familiar legal, y bueno, es un poco difícil, un poco costoso, pero hemos logrado tener ya varias reunificaciones familiares, y pues bueno, hemos llegado a la conclusión de que esa es nuestra meta principal.
She says that principally that they represent deported mothers, and on occasion there are dreamers who've been deported that they have supported. I met one of them that they worked with to help him get him back, and what they're really after is family reunification, which is very difficult.
Sí, otra de las cosas muy importantes, especialmente en tiempo de pandemia, es que nos hemos dado cuenta que el cuidado de la salud mental en este tiempo es más importante que nunca.
She says that now with the pandemic that mental health has become a greater issue than ever in terms of the women and the families.
Hemos conseguido talleres, cursos de ayuda psicológica, de terapistas, psicólogos que nos están ayudando a contener la desesperación que tenemos por no saber cómo están. Algunas no saben cómo están sus hijos, dónde están sus hijos, si los están cuidando bien, si ellos mismos se están protegiendo. Y pues bueno, eso llevó a una de nuestras madres a cruzar la frontera hace más de 2 meses, porque no sabía de
Deja
sus
traducir
hijos.
un poquito.
Y
They have
ahora
done.
nosotras no sabemos de ellos.
She is. They have done a lot of workshops and work with psychologists and therapists to help families during this difficult time. And one of the preoccupations on top of everything having to do with the epidemic is they don't know how their children are. What is happening to them? Are they okay? And how can they figure out ways to support them?
Y les comentaba que una de nuestras mamás deportadas cruzó la frontera en busca de sus hijos porque no sabía de ellos. Cruzó hace más de 2 meses y pues nunca llegó a su destino. No sabemos en dónde está, si está viva, si murió. Y pues bueno, eso nos hace reflexionar en que todavía hay muchas cosas que hacer para poder contener aquí a las madres, para que no tomen esa decisión que tomó.
Si entiendo bien que una de las madres cruzó la frontera y no saben qué ha pasado con ella, si está bien o se murió o está encarcelada.
No sabemos nada.
¿Y cuántas mujeres están involucradas con ustedes?
Bueno, ahora nosotras tenemos una base de datos a las mujeres que hemos ayudado, a los jóvenes, a los Dreamers. Nosotros tenemos una base de datos donde hay más de 200 personas a las que de una u otra manera les hemos ayudado durante las caravanas, durante los éxodos, a mujeres deportadas. Y sí ha sido una lista grande, aunque contamos con pocos recursos, pero hacemos lo que podemos y tratamos de brindarle apoyo a quien podamos.
So they have people like the one who crossed the border and they don't know if she's alive or how she's surviving. And they have on their list about 200 women who have come in contact with them. It's difficult to find the women who are deported because nobody reports them. They don't know where they're coming. Once in a great while, they hear the news so they're always trying to figure out ways to help the families of the deported Dreamers moms.
Otra cosa importante que hacemos en nuestro grupo es que a partir de hace 2 años empezaron los padres varones que quedaron en Estados Unidos a querer la custodia completa de los hijos de las mujeres deportadas. Y pues bueno, ya hemos peleado 2 custodias desde aquí de México en las Cortes de Estados Unidos con representación de abogados de migración y se han ganado las 2 custodias por la mitad y eso para nosotros ha sido un precedente y ha sido una victoria el saber que 2 madres pueden ahora ya tener comunicación con sus hijos.
One of the things that you have to know about the Dreamers moms is they really have no money, no fundraising, no big grants that come to them. And so one of the big issues that happens with when they're deported, that the fathers take on the children and refuse to have the children be able to communicate with their mothers in Tijuana. And so they've won 2 court cases in the United States to allow the mothers to have communications with their children. And as a parent, that is a major victory.
Y otra de las cosas que ahorita estamos haciendo es que ya 3 mujeres regresaron legalmente a Estados Unidos. Hemos ayudado a 2 Dreamers a volver. Tenemos 2 custodias ganadas por la mitad y 5 de nosotras estamos aplicando por una visa U porque fuimos víctimas de crimen en Estados Unidos.
Okay.
Y este motivo pudiera regresarnos con nuestra familia.
Yeah, so she says that one of the work that they do, which is really tough doing legal work and trying to get reinstated in the United States. And so they've gotten 2 people, 2 mothers that were able to get back because of a U visa, which is one where there's been violence and abuse of the woman. And she's they have 5 women who are in process with their legal process, including Yolanda is one of them that's has their papers in, and they're fighting to get reinstated in the United States, because they when they took them out, they didn't listen to that they had this claim for a U visa when they deported them.
Y pues bueno, esas son algunas de las cosas que hacemos. También ofrecemos artículos de higiene personal, les ayudamos a conseguir sus actas de nacimiento, documentos de identidad, en algunas ocasiones acceso a las escuelas cuando les niegan el no quererlos integrar porque son extranjeros. Ahora precisamente estamos en otra red, en una red que se llama GIE, donde estamos directamente tratando de incidir en los cambios para que los niños que vienen como extranjeros, o sea, nuestros hijos, puedan acceder a la escuela inmediatamente mientras se les consiguen sus actas de doble nacionalidad, que ya hemos conseguido algunas. Es algo difícil, pero no es algo imposible, solamente que a veces la gente se cierra a hablar con nosotros, se cierran a hacer cambios en las leyes, y pues bueno, hay mucho trabajo que hacer, pero estamos dispuestos a seguir trabajando aún en este tiempo de pandemia.
So one of the things that they do is that women who they bring their children over is doing all the legal process so that they can be identified, first the parents as dual citizens and citizenship both in the United States and in Mexico, and the same for the children, so that they can get access to school. Many of the people, as you can imagine, when they're deported, they don't have their documents with them for any country. They're taken without notice and sent across the border. Adelante.
Y pues bueno, quiero agradecerles el espacio, el tiempo, y pedirles que en algún momento vamos a hacer un GoFundMe. Esta vez sí lo voy a pedir abiertamente, es para poder reunificar a estas 5 madres. Estamos ya como a mitad de los procesos, necesitamos fondos para poder reunificarlas, y pues bueno, creo que todos los que nos dedicamos a luchar por los derechos humanos y los que no estamos de acuerdo con las leyes injustas de migración, pues tenemos que echarnos la mano unos a otros. Les quiero agradecer a todos por su trabajo. Muchas gracias, Leno, por invitarnos, y bueno, que tengan una bonita tarde.
And she wants to thank us for the work that we all do and the support and the things that they're trying to do for the 5 mothers who are in process. One of the things that I know from going to Tijuana regularly is they do a lot of activities with the mothers. One of the things that I went was to a Mother's Day event. Carolyn and I were there, and it was very beautiful to see the Dreamers moms. And you know, sometimes their children's come to the border, and they put a mesh over there at the Friendship Park so you couldn't put your hand through there. So people put their pinky there. They call it the pinky kiss, where you touch their families. And it may not seem like a lot, but I pinky kissed a couple of people, and it's electric. But you know, people, that's as close as they can get, and there's a lot of lágrimas. They do a lot of activities that they, when they get used clothing donations and other things, they go and sell them to raise monies. They do, along with the veterans, they do activities around Thanksgiving and other holidays and the Christmas holidays. So all of these groups that are working in Tijuana need their help. And obviously, one of the things that Yolanda did not say is for those people who would like to have a further conversation, is she has done Zoom meetings or talleres, workshops from Zoom, and she can do that so people could have that. The other thing is that she's invited all over the country to speak in behalf of women and women working in the border. So gracias. Y a ver si hay preguntas más después. Our next speaker is Carolina Cortez, and she's related, fortunately or unfortunately, to one of our committee members, Laura, and she works for Border Kindness. I met her recently. You know, one of the things that impressed me about Carolina is that she's a real active student and is really wanting to use her time, and the COVID-19 interrupted her plans. She was in Germany studying and working, and she has had a lot of different experiences, including working for somebody by the name of Senator Kamala Harris. So I'm going to invite Carolina to talk a little about her work and her dreams. Carolina?
Hello, buenas tardes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolina Cortez, and I'm actually coming to you from Mexicali. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that pertain specifically to Mexicali. But I am currently working with Border Kindness, and I manage the Children's Empowerment Center. We are a fairly new nonprofit organization. We began in fall of 2018, so about 2 years ago, with our executive director, Kelly Overton, just bringing clothes to the migrants in Mexicali in his car, sleeping in his car and just trying to really help in any way that he could. And over the past 2 years, we have grown exponentially. We started with about a staff of about 2 to 3 people, and we're at 20 right now, about to be to 25 in the next couple of weeks. And with that, our services have also grown here in Mexicali, which I will briefly talk about and briefly mention before talking specifically about the Children's Empowerment Center and the work that we're doing to try and provide some sort of education and help to all of the migrant adolescents, but also local adolescents here in Mexicali as well. We provide legal services to the migrant community here in Mexicali. That meant pairing up migrants with lawyers through help of other organizations, providing transportation for migrants to get to their MPP immigration court hearings in Tijuana. That was a lot of the work that we were doing before COVID-19, and we plan on continuing that once, the immigration court situation kind of starts back up. But as of now, we are just kind of the middleman between the migrant community and I would say the immigration court to get them the correct information of when their next court date is. We all know that those dates are getting pushed back, and a lot of the time these people don't have a way of getting that information if it's not coming to our office and asking directly. We also have a full service medical clinic, which has been up and running throughout the COVID pandemic. We are currently, a lot of the people that we help need prenatal care. So that's very exciting that we're able to help women just get access to all of the help that they need to get them through their pregnancy. We have had a couple of COVID or patients that test positive for COVID, so taking the necessary precautions to get them the help that they need here in Mexicali. And very exciting, but we're about to open a sort of like a food kitchen in the next couple of weeks to provide migrants with healthy and nutritious food. A lot of the times it's the only access that they have to getting food, whether it means that morning or that day. And we're really excited to be partnering with a lot of really great organizations that will be helping us donate, but that kitchen will be run independently and will be providing large quantities of food to the shelters here in Mexicali. And we also have a student center, which is the thing that I primarily do. That's kind of what I manage. Our goal right now has kind of shifted as the entire education space has shifted into providing local students and migrants with access to technology so they have the opportunity to continue their education online. This has been specifically challenging because of either lack of awareness of how to use technology, so just basic things like the programs that teachers are using to reach their students, or just not knowing how to use a computer, not knowing how to use a smartphone, or just not having internet or a reliable space to get Wi-Fi. We're really excited to have and be able to provide that space for students, following safety precautions, you know, taking all of the precautions very seriously, but the space is open. We have access to computers, we have internet, we have printing, and all of these things are free of charge for anyone that shows up to the student center. We are also providing tutoring for students whose education has either been disrupted because of their journey from their home country to the border. A lot of these kids haven't had formal education in about a year and a half. So we're trying to provide a service where we analyze where these students are and how we can help them improve without actually having a student be enrolled in the education system, which is another challenge in itself for the migrant parents or the migrant community. And we're also partnering with other organizations to provide educational programming for these students. This is specifically geared towards migrant kids that can't actually enroll into the education system here in Baja California. And these classes will include basic computer skills, coding. We're hoping to do English classes. We're really excited to use virtual reality technology to, you know, give these kids, these youths, not only just like hope and, you know, have them view education, have them view learning as a way to improve not only themselves, but hopefully their future, but also using this as an opportunity for them to find their own interests, find their own passions, and, you know, really kind of develop their own unique set of interests, despite the usually very, very challenging situation that they're in. Like I said, I would be happy to answer any questions that there are about Mexicali, what the situation is currently like in Mexicali, or anything specifically geared towards the education or the challenges that a lot of the youths or adolescents are facing right now during the COVID pandemic. So,
Carolina, before I let you go, we have 2 minutes here. I wonder if you could share, because I was very impressed, because you're a bit younger than some of us. Coming back to Mexicali and the area, what motivated you to want to work with an organization like this with so many challenges as a young person?
Yeah. So I have personal ties to Mexicali. I live here now. My parents are from here. My family's from here. So for me, it's a little bit more of an emotional tie because I've always seen a lot of the inequality and the poverty that there is here, especially when you come from, you know, like I'm from California. So you see a lot of the wealth and privilege that we have just from being in the United States. And my time in Mexicali has always been like a wake-up call to the true amount of world inequality that there actually is. And I know that Mexicali is only a certain grade or a degree of poverty, but I'm just very passionate about like working in whatever way I can to kind of diminish and help the levels of inequality globally. I'm very interested in working with communities from Latin America. I'm Mexicana, so I feel like this is my own way of giving back to my community. But a lot of the times we think of our community as Mexican Americans or people that identify as Latinx in the United States, but I think a lot of the times we forget about the people that are still living in Mexico, in Honduras, and Guatemala, and how their struggles can sometimes be a lot more challenging than what we might face in the privilege of living in the US.
Great, thank you very much. I'm very impressed that you would go and work for that organization there and go back to your roots. Now we'd like to hear from Hector Barajas. I started going because my wife was doing some volunteer work with Maria Ornales and some other people at Al Otro Lado, which is a legal firm there in Tijuana. And when I went as a spectator, and people kept talking to me about this group, Deported Veterans. I said, how can they deport a veteran? It was insane. I said, you know, if they've been a veteran, how can the government deport them? So I went in search of deported veterans. And when I met deported veterans, I also met the Dreamers Moms. But the story of the deported veterans is one that America needs to know about. So I'd like to invite my brother, Hector Barajas, to talk about himself and his work. Hector.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Leno, and I see Eduardo there as well, and Karen, and Laura, everybody that I met. So, well, my name's Hector Barajas. I was born in Fresnillo, Zacatecas in 1977. I came to the United States like many immigrants as a young child, or either as an adult, and eventually I ended up getting a green card through my parents. I enlisted in the U.S. military at the age of 17. And eventually went on to basic training. When I turned 18, I ended up enlisting for 4 years and then re-enlisting for another 3. So I did a total of 6 years. Served with the 82nd Airborne. I didn't serve in combat, but I put my life on the line at various times in airborne operations. While in the military, I started having problems with alcohol and addiction. And after my honorable discharge, it continued. Probably about 6 months after I got out, I ended up in a situation where somebody fired a weapon at another vehicle, and I went to prison for 3 years. After my prison sentence, I thought I was gonna just, do like paroled, or I was supposed to parole and get out. And everybody told me, I'm like, you're gonna get, because I did have an immigration hold in Bakersfield, INS. And sure enough, the U.S. Marshals picked me up, put me on an airplane, kind of like Con Air, and sent me over to Eloy, Arizona, where I fought my case for a year. Ended up getting deported in 2004, and then I just decided, this Mexico's not for me, and I snuck back into the country. 6 months later, laid low, and for the first time in my life, I actually had to live as an undocumented person, like working, or having to deal with like putting up with difficult jobs, or seeing how people would get treated. When I remember I used to work as a roofer in the union, and they would tell me, your time starts when you get on the roof. It'll take us an hour to load the roof. So I mean, it was just those kind of things. Always getting got pulled over maybe 10 times. Got my vehicle impounded because I didn't have a driver's license. And then eventually I got pulled over for a traffic violation and got deported for the second time. This time I had a life deportation, and I had started a family. I had a young child, and I was just tired of hiding and I wanted to do things the right way. So I started using social media. I started telling people my story, and I thought it was going to be like something quick, but it took me 10 years out of the United States. This last time, officially, I was deported for 14 years. And I started organizing, connecting with people. When I first started out, I had a little list of people that I knew that were deported. And then now I have a list of 50-something people. No, I mean, people in 50-something countries all over the world, from the Philippines to the UK to predominantly, obviously, people from Mexico. And we think it's either a couple hundred, if not thousands, of people that have been deported since 1986. So we're talking about 20-something years of deportation of U.S. veterans. nobody's really kind of done anything about it. When I started organizing, this was actually prior to my second deportation. There was already a couple people organizing, gentlemen, and maybe 3 or 4 people. And when I got deported, I turned my apartment into a place where people could stay at. And I didn't have any real set goals. It was just like, come stay with me. And it's good to do things just out of the blue, but you really gotta, put things in order and have a mission and goals. And that
Hector,
ended up,
can you say what they offered you, how they offered you citizenship as an immigrant?
Sure. They didn't. When I was in the military, I was never offered citizenship or what do you call it? How to get my citizenship or how to do it. So one of the things that I do tell people is that even though there is a process in the military to become a citizen, there's no program. So, and I've heard people say, well, we're not there to hold your hand, but we are. We hold your hand on how to shoot a rifle, how to march. So why not ensure that you hold that individual's hand to make sure that you take care of them? That's part of being a squad leader or a supervisor. That, it's kind of like if you're a Walmart employee and there's a 501k or 401k, then show that person what it is and help them. So I started organizing, and unfortunately, through a lot of different things, I ended up being homeless at some point. I ended up being strung out for a couple months. So I've been suicidal. I've been through like all the ups and downs of being a deportee. And when I decided to do this the second time, I decided to use what I've learned in the military, some of the discipline. Also, being in prison, you got to be disciplined too. There's rules and regulations. And I went from creating forms on dealing with the guys on, because I always struggle with the guys on telling them what to do. Like, hey guys, turn off the lights. We're going to get up at a certain hour, and they wouldn't listen to me. So I created a little form, these are the rules. You screw up 3 times and you're out. But just those kind of things, I started implementing ways of organizing the house, and then just organizing other people. And right now we have another support house in Juarez, and online bunkers like Dominican Republic, which I've been there personally, Haiti, I've been to Costa Rica and different places. And right now we ended up turning into a resource center. So we provide shelter, we provide food depending on what kind of things have been donated. Right now with the pandemic, it's gotten kind of slow. Also clothing, hygiene products. We connect the veterans with job placement with the call centers. We also provide legal assistance, and that's through the partners that we work with, like the ACLU, Public Counsel, psychological, emotional support. So we have people that volunteer their services. We've had people that have done yoga to individual, one-on-one, peer-to-peer. And now with this COVID, it's also going to be easier because we can do stuff via Zoom. We do community events like Thanksgiving, dinners. We we observe all major U.S. holidays, and those are the times when we usually do like observance at the border, and we would get media to kind of cover those things. We do funeral details. We've had men pass away on this side of the border, so I've personally done a couple of funeral details, which to me, it's the odd part about it is that when we do take some of the bodies across, they are obviously they can, if they have an honorable discharge, they can get their full military honors, and they're honored by the United States. And to me, that's that's just it's morally, I think it's wrong.
Wow.
What else do we do? We work with state and federal and county legislators. So we've gotten state legislation passed. On the federal level, we've helped introduce legislation, and then we've also passed county bills like San Diego County, where we have a vet program that still hasn't been in place because of the COVID. And we've had all kind of authorities visit Tijuana, from senators. We've had maybe 3 or 4 congressional visits, anywhere from Tammy Duckworth to Congressman Vargas, Nanette Barragan, was it Congressman Grijalva, and different people. And recently, I've been also asked to speak before Congress as well. And I know some of you guys don't like Donald Trump, but I went to the the State of the Union, and for me it was important because I was able to connect with different allies and just just to see what that thing's kind of about is interesting. But what else? We've also last week I spoke with Isla Map and for their fundraising event, and they are basically again the military doesn't provide really any legal assistance. So some of the attorneys that are in the military that help these veterans are not, they're not experts. So Isla Map actually partners up with these attorneys, and they actually assist these active duty people and their family members to get naturalization. And so that's kind of what we do. We do many different things, and also and just going into how I ended up back in the United States, I was able to get a pardon through Governor General Brown about 6 months before April 13th of 2018 when I got my citizenship. But it took me about 5 years to get my citizenship. They were trying to deny me at one point because I grew up in Compton, California. I grew up with a lot of gang members, and some of those guys I still talk to, because they're deported and they live here. And they were trying to deny me for good moral character because I talked to these guys. And I'm like, and basically, I talked to a lot of these gang members because it's more of a social, social interaction. It's not like we're going to plan like the next drive-by or anything like that. So the government was just kind of crazy about going after me. And then even the same day that I was supposed to naturalize, they were alleging that I had lied to them about how many times I had crossed the border, because this newspaper published I had crossed more than 3 times. And they literally had me get on the phone with my attorney, and we had to go back and forth and sign documents. And had I lied to them, they wouldn't have let me cross that specific day. But finally, we went over everything, and so I became a U.S. citizen in April 13th of 2018. As far as I know, I'm the only person that's ever become a citizen after having a criminal record and being deported twice. It's been through the help of many people, and like the organizations like the ACLU and some of the legislators and the allies that we create today, like like Leno and everybody else that keep our spirits up. And many other men have also gotten pardons. We have over half a dozen men that are in the process of returning home, and also we help many men with their VA benefits. We've gotten over 20 people their VA benefits, anywhere from a couple $100s to $3,000 a month. And in Mexico, $3,000 a month it's a large amount of money. But that's pretty much it. I want to thank you guys for having me on here. I'm horrible at public speaking. But if anybody wants to reach out, they can reach us out through our Facebook. We also have various documentaries. One that was done by that's on Showtime right now. It's on called Ready for War. It talks about the different situations that veterans go through, and it was co-produced by Drake as well. And you can just pretty much find us if you look us up on Google, my name, or Deported Veteran Support. As you'll see, like pretty much a lot of media that's been kind of done on us. But the average American still does not know about deported veterans, and we want to thank you guys for giving us this opportunity so we can bring our men and women home. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Hector. I don't know if Dulce has come on.
Yeah.
Who's our next speaker? Is Dulce in there? Does anybody see her? Dulce Garcia?
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. I didn't know. Where are you? Be hiding from me.
No, I've been here. No me peiné, Leno, but I'm here.
Yeah, despeinadas. So Dulce has been a real find. Border Angels has been around, as I understand, over 25 years. They work on both sides of the border and do amazing work. And I was able to some months ago go with them when they did a water drop and took some reporters with us. But one of the great things is all of the volunteers that they've gotten that have provided a lot of food and materials over the years to people in Tijuana. But right now everything's pretty much shut down with the virus. One of the things that's I found interesting when I finally tracked down Dulce, and she probably thought I was stalking her, but she's an attorney, an immigration attorney. She's a DACA recipient, and she also was one of the plaintiffs in the case that went before the Supreme Court. So I want to welcome you, Dulce, to this event and tell us your story, sister.
Yes, thank you, Leno, for this space. I want to start off by saying that Border Angels, our mission is one based of love, but it's an active kind of love. Sure enough, the water drop program is one of our signature programs here at the border, and it has the aim of reducing the amount of deaths, people that are crossing through our deserts, specifically here in our San Diego deserts. I want to give a few facts. The reason why we have to do this work is as a direct result of the inhumane policies that are in place and have been in place for a number of years. So not unique to this administration, but as a result of this administration and this presidency, we certainly have had the last few years being more difficult when doing our water drops. In 2018, the Border Patrol reported 283 deaths. These are deaths that have been confirmed, where Border Patrol has physically recovered or seen and confirmed these deaths in our desert. So many more people go missing in the desert and are never found or are unaccounted for or mislogged and not logged in or recorded as a migrant that was crossing through the desert. As it was said earlier, one example could be the mom that's missing that we know attempted crossing and then we never hear from them. In our office, we're often now, the new thing that we're realizing is we're getting calls from people who say, my person was supposed to have crossed through the ocean and they're missing now. So now we're seeing, the boats that are tipping over and people are dying in our oceans. And people are still dying in our rivers as well. And this is a direct result of funneling people to their deaths as things like Operation Gatekeeper and other criminalization of our immigrant community, other policies and laws that were being put in place, funneling people to their deaths for many years now. For 2019, the numbers are not out. We can only speculate. Border Patrol is not releasing them yet, even though they're overdue for a year. We think maybe because they're higher than usual, but they're not reporting those. But we know that thousands of people have died crossing through our desert. And as I was hearing Hector talk about funerals, we've been providing support as well for people, family members of people that we know passed away in the desert in the last couple of years. So we have noticed the trend where it's not just the single male that's crossing, but we also find items in the desert that indicate that it's families that are crossing. Again, as a direct result of essentially dismantling the asylum process, we see now diapers in the desert, little kids' backpack, little shoes, women hygiene products as we're dropping supplies in the desert. As a result of the pandemic, we stopped doing our public water drops where we would have even 100 people at any one weekend in the desert. And instead, we're strategically dropping water in small groups with folks that are experienced and have done water drops. Our team is out there even if it's 120-degree weather. And we expect tomorrow that it'll be over 110 degrees. And our team's gonna be there dropping water, led by our co-directors, James Cordero, who happens to be in that famous list that was released, like a watch list that the government keeps of immigration lawyers, activists, journalists, and one of our co-water drop directors. And the other director, Jacqueline Arellano, who also does these water drops, have noticed the increased harassment of Border Patrol. And that is a little different from what we experienced before this administration. And the emboldenment of Border Patrol. And for the first time in the many years that we have doing this work, we've had to assemble a legal team in case one of us gets arrested dropping supplies in the desert or blankets in the winter in the mountains. We started this year our bond program because people, when they show up at our doors, and instead of welcoming them, we put them in detention centers, asylum seekers. And I want to share with you guys the recent trend that we see, and what ICE is asking of these folks. You know, these are folks that flee from Cameroon, for example, that flee from Mauritania, African countries, and with nothing on their back, and have suffered through so much trauma. And then we're asking them for $18,000, $21,000, $15,000, $12,000. These are the most recent requests received in the last week or so. $10,000, $10,000, and $12,000. And these are from African countries, as well as Haiti, Cuba, and China. And so it's no coincidence that our Black folks are the ones that are having to go through all of these hoops that the government puts on them, and then asks for essentially a ransom in the thousands of dollars to release these folks. So Border Angels, again, this work is not done in isolation. None of this is done in isolation. But we've been able to bond 56 people just this year alone. When the pandemic hit, we were placing bonds maybe seven sometimes in a week. So this year we've been able to place bonds for 56 people that did not die of COVID, because we were able to get them out, but people are still dying. And ICE is still refusing to release folks, even from Adelanto, when we know there's an outbreak of COVID-19. And when we're ready and willing to bond these folks out, they've shut down the process where we can't even get these folks out. To give you an idea of who the folks that are migrating are, as a quick example, there was a gentleman who migrated from Cameroon through Brazil, spent 6 months in an immigration detention cell in Mexico. And then after traveling through 13 countries, the US put him in a detention center in Otay Mesa for another 6 months. So this guy, after having seen his family be killed in front of him and suffered third-degree burns himself, he was put in a detention center. And then asked for, I think in his case, it was like $7,500 or $10,000 that were being asked of him to be released. That's just a very small glimpse into what these folks are going through as they are migrating to our countries and asking for help as asylum seekers. We've been able to support over 12 shelters in Tijuana, and providing direct monetary assistance. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to take donations in kind. Last year, we would line up even 20, 25 cars and take donations, as Leno was saying. Well, we haven't been able to do that this year, but we're still providing monetary support. And so we know of shelters that have like a broken fridge, for example. We just provided a brand new fridge to another shelter this week. Washer and dryers. You know, we're going through a pandemic, and we tell them keep everything neat and clean and disinfect everything. But if you don't have a dryer and you're dependent on the sun, you know, it's challenging. It's challenging to isolate 100, 200 people in a shelter, and you know, not when you don't have the supplies to even buy masks. So we've been able to provide masks, some medicine, and monetary support so that they can buy the supplies that they need and make it through the pandemic. And we just started this year our brand new Green Card for Kids program, where we provide legal assistance to the children that are in the custody of the Riverside County that are perhaps eligible for something called SIJ, Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. So kids that have suffered abuse, neglect, or abandonment by one or both parents, and end up in the custody of the state, in this case, Riverside County, may qualify for something called Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. And we provide legal support so that these children can go through this process. That allows them to then apply for legal permanent residency and then eventually citizenship. And today, this month, we received notice that we have two of these kids that may possibly naturalize, become U.S. citizens. So That's our Green Card for Kids program. Again, we wish we wouldn't have to do any of this work. That's our hope, that's our goal, to one day not have to be dropping water in the desert. But unfortunately, since it's needed, we're going to keep doing this work even through a pandemic, even in nice weather like this one. But I can talk all day, Leno, about these issues, including, other efforts here in San Diego County to change the laws and policies locally, and to shut down the detention centers. But
We have one more minute. Counselor.
Then I will say this: if you haven't registered to vote, please vote and register as many people as you can to vote. We cannot stand 4 more years of this. Not that things were great before, or that things are going to get solved with one election. But we have suffered, as I mentioned before, an increased amount of pain, I would say, especially as an undocumented person, and especially here on our border. So please vote and register as many people as you can to vote, and vote for immigrant rights. And make sure that everyone that you know has filled out the census as well. There's hope. If I can say that in like 10 seconds, we haven't lost hope. The silver lining in all of this is that there are people stepping up on the Tijuana side of the border, as you know, from these wonderful colegas and compas doing the great work in Tijuana, and also on this side of the border. So there's hope. That's the silver lining. Border Angels is 100% funded by the people, for the people. We don't get any government grants whatsoever, nothing. It's people that are doing bake sales, selling earrings like this one for $10. It's people that are doing designs on t-shirts. There was one that did abolish ICE on a cake and sold that cake. So, pencils. There was a person that raised $3,800 selling a pencil that said abolish ICE on there. So that's how we're being able to bond 56 people and provide assistance for over 12 shelters in Tijuana. And, so there's hope. Thank you.
Gracias. Hay esperanza para todos. Hasta la victoria. So we have time for some questions. I don't know if people want to, in the chat room, send some questions, and we can try to get them asked while we still have our panelists here. So don't be shy. We have time. It is important, the message that you were doing, Dulce, because that's one of the reasons that we started doing this effort, was because we wanted to bring to light the conditions of the border across the United States, because immigration has always been a major issue in these elections, and we wanted to give people a reason to vote. We'll be doing an executive summary on the 29th. We have one more panel after this one, then the executive summary on the 29th of October. And to talk to the media about what we found in themes across the border. And then we hope to have a final document afterwards, a white paper, that we can send out to people, and that they can, so that we can take to the UN, the OAS, and other human rights bodies to tell them what we found, because people seem to forget with everything else that's going around, and people don't understand how much the pandemic has hurt people of color in the United States, and in particular people on the borders on both sides. So are there any questions we get in?
Leno?
Dulce, go ahead, Laura, you're the boss.
No, there's a question for Hector as to how many veterans have been deported.
We really don't know. That's one of the part of the what's been introduced in the legislation is for ICE to track veterans. But we really wouldn't know, because it's just been going on since the 90s and even beforehand. But they don't ask you. When I went to prison and county jails, they actually asked me whether I was a veteran, and they are able to give statistics for those kind of. But Homeland Security still refuses to do that. So we have no idea. I have about 500 people on my list, but that's just like a small, very small number of people.
Okay. There's another question. Who is able to go back and forth across the border in Tijuana at this time? That's for any of the panelists. So who is able to cross the border back and forth?
Yeah, I think I can answer that. The ones that are able to cross back and forth are the citizens and residents, or someone that has an essential activity in the US. So like we as tourists, we cannot go, the asylum seekers cannot cross, so just them.
Okay. There's another question. How many migrants are in Mexicali? In Tijuana? Not migrants, asylum seekers, I'm sorry.
I can go first. I think as of now, I think actually just our executive director just gave me this number this morning, but the numbers have significantly reduced since the pandemic started and over just the course of the past 2 years. I think as of now, we're probably at around 500 to 1,000, which is significantly less than about 2 years ago when there were between like 2,500 and 5,000
Okay,
in Mexicali.
Thank you. So what about in Tijuana?
We actually don't know like the number because we don't have a census, and a lot of the asylum seekers are not in shelters. But there is the thought that there might be more than 5,000 because there are the asylum seekers, like the ones that are on MPP, the ones that are listed in the metering, and the ones that want to get enlisted. So we have like 3 categories that goes to the same way. And I just want to answer the question that I just saw about the volunteers. If you are a resident or a citizen, you can cross the border, but if you are not, then you just can't. They might ask you at the gate, why did you cross to Tijuana, but you shouldn't have a lot of problems.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Are citizens being arrested for aiding migrants in the desert? This is for Dulce. Yeah.
Well, we saw the prosecution of Dr. Scott Warren in Arizona for doing similar work. And when that trial resulted in a hung jury, meaning they didn't find him guilty, they used resources to then prosecute him a second time. And again, they lost the case and they found him not guilty. But it was definitely, you know, as a message that we're criminalizing humanitarian aid. And this is a white man, right? Dr. Scott Warren. And that's why we have a lot of fear for those of us that are not white men to do this kind of work, particularly to be in the desert doing this kind of work. And that's why we've had to assemble a legal team. And their facilities, No Mas Muertes, has been raided during the summer a couple of times, and they were arrested. Yeah, they're definitely making a case out of their humanitarian aid work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Laura?
No, that's all. Oh, are the vigilante numbers growing the same?
Oh my goodness. So when we've been in the desert, we see our gallons being used as target practice. We don't know if it's Border Patrol, we don't know if it's the surrounding community members, but we're in the desert. Sometimes during our water drops, we hear the gunshots happening and we see people with their target practice happening. And so as you're going through the desert, you see thousands and thousands of shells and casings of signs that people were shooting through there. And then it's heartbreaking to see that our water gallons are being used that way for target practice, right? And so we think like these folks are hopefully acting out of ignorance and not out of hate. But I mean, if you're a migrant crossing in the middle of the desert and you see these and you hear these gunshots, you know, you can only imagine what's happening, especially if you're running from civil unrest. You know, if you're running from a country where you're literally running away from your government and trying to save your own life or the life of your child, it's pretty terrifying. But yeah, just 2 weeks ago we saw people practicing in the desert. But you know, we've seen the videos of Border Patrol slashing our gallons of water, and so that, I mean, that's all I could really say is that yes, we've seen the increased harassment by Border Patrol, where they're taking note of our vehicles when we're out in the desert. They're making their presence known. You know, they definitely approach us in a different manner as what they used to do before. My very first water drop in 2014, the Border Patrol agent approached us with the intent of educating us and having a real conversation with him. That has not been the case in the last couple of years. The approach has been more aggressive.
Okay.
Could you talk about, mention how you mark the water bottles that you put out? What
Yeah,
you put on it?
we constantly change the way that we drop these supplies in the desert, and that's because we're collaborating with other folks and learning from other people that have been doing this work as well, like No Mas Muertes. And so now we place water differently, and you know, we wrap it up differently, but what has stayed the same is the messages that we write on the bottle, messages of encouragement. Just over the summer, we received a call from a family member, a wife of a man that was missing in the desert, and he was able to place a phone call in the desert telling our water drop team that he had used one of our water gallons during his journey and was lost in the desert. Unfortunately, Jose passed away, and the wife had to say goodbye to him through the phone in the desert. But the wife was really grateful that because of that water gallon that he had reached, he was able to place this call and say his goodbyes to her and have a little extra time for him in this life. But we often get calls later of people saying, you know, your socks kept me warm. That pair of socks kept my toes from freezing. Or, you know, I was going to give up, and then I read on the water gallon a message of encouragement saying, you're almost there, or you're loved and you're welcomed. Bienvenido. Sigue tu camino, you know, and people get encouraged by reading that message. And as I started this conversation, you know, our mission is one of love, but it's active. And this is one way that we transmit that love to our neighbor, by writing these messages on these bottles. And we often get calls later saying how encouraging it was for those folks.
Okay, good. Yeah, what are the numbers of farm workers crossing into the US and back into Mexico in California? Does anyone know?
I don't have those numbers of specifically farm workers, but that's a good opportunity to address the immigration policies. So as I mentioned, I'm undocumented, so I'm one of the estimated 11 million people in this country. And the laws that I was referring to earlier, what it caused was it created 5 million of us undocumented in this country in the US, and what we refer to as this golden cage where we can't leave. And the purpose of that was to stop encouraging people from coming into the country. The unintended consequence of that is that it kept us here. So we're not going back and forth across the border, but we have settled here and created roots here in the US. So you have this situation where you have people like me that have been here for over 30 years without a path to citizenship, without a path to become a legal permanent resident. So I'm undocumented. And the only protection I have right now is DACA, and only because we sued the president to defend it. And if this president gets elected, I'm probably going to be one of those people that it's going to end up in a detention center and it's going to require a bond myself. that's the reality that we still have today in 2020. Now, when the president was elected, there was there's a study that showed there was a net zero migration happening from Mexico. So the same amount of people that were coming into the U.S. were the same amount of people that were leaving the U.S. And so there was net zero migration. And so the whole idea that we needed this wall to stop illegal immigrants from coming over, quote unquote, it was politicized, but it was factually wrong. Undocumented people like myself have been here in the U.S. for a long time and want to remain here in the U.S., but we have no path to citizenship, and we have no ability to travel across the border. And now this president doubled down on criminalizing our community. So we see now with this administration, incarceration of people that are coming across the border unlawfully.
Okay, this one is for Tania, I believe. How do asylum seekers receive updates on their MPP hearings? Are the judges assigned by DHS or public officials?
So the asylum seekers have a number, like the alien number, the number they call their case number. So they can call to a number is given to them to ask for their date for their next hearing, or they can go online and check in the Department of Justice. I think it's, let me just check, justice.gov, gov, they can check their hearings. So what they do is, because now they know they can do that, and it's getting easier for them because they have to do that a lot of times. So they can go online, or they can call to the organizations they usually go to, and we can help them to check that. But they do not receive like an email or a call or anything. So they have to check for themselves. And about the judges, I actually don't know how they are assigned on the cases. And I just want to say something that I remember about the vigilantes or the hate groups. There is the Southern Law Poverty Center. They do a hate report every year. And actually it's very interesting because they work with the hate groups in all the United States, and they do have located anti-immigrant hate groups on the border and across the United States. So if you can check that, it's very, very interesting. And also, I do check that last year, and there is an increasing number from the time that Trump got into the administration, because his speech has been like all of criminalization and stuff. So you can check that just as an additional information. And well, yeah.
Okay, thank you. This is for everyone, and I think it's very important. Would it be possible to share all links and places to donate and support all of these? Are there any emails, and be sent if possible to everyone who registered to this talk? And Bob said yes, he will make that available. So let's see, that's all I have.
No other questions?
No questions, but a lot of thank yous.
Well, I want to mention a couple of things, if you'll let me speak louder. I have to ask for permission.
Of course.
One of the important parts is that of this work is that since we started along the border in Brownsville, Tamaulipas, that it's incredible the courage that people have working. And I know for those of you in Mexicali and all of the speakers that are here in Tijuana, you risk your health and well-being because the government doesn't want us, both the Mexican and the US government doesn't want you to be doing what you're doing. And so I'm always in awe of the good work that's done with very little resources. These are not multi-million-dollar agencies. People sacrifice, and to see somebody like Carolina come in part of our youth in energy that we need in this movement to come. And the other thing that struck me as we go across the country, the number of women who have been our panelists.
Yes.
If you would have done this 25 years ago, fueran puros caballos or men. And it shows that at least we're beginning to recognize as a community the strength of good men as well as some great women in doing this work. And that's what makes it available. And for people that, you know, prior to the coronavirus, I was taking delegations into Tijuana, and then now that I know Carolina, we're going into Mexicali once we can cross the border. But our issue was that when we took activists across the border and they met people, and they met people like Dulce on this side of the border, that it gave them more reason to talk about immigration issues and to be able to donate and get involved, because immigration change and work doesn't mean you have to be have all the degrees or all the knowledge or all the resources. You just have to have el corazón, the heart, to want to do the work. And the other resources are there, legal, moral, and spiritual. But I think the important part is, and I just sent out a notice to some of my list and asking people to vote for me on November 3rd. And they said, why vote for you? You're not a candidate. I said, well, when you vote for me, you're voting for you. And when they vote for us, you're really voting for all the people that we care about, the immigrants, LGBTQs, the environment, you know, deported veterans, dreamers' moms, women's rights. And that's what you got to do. And we got to work as people on this side of the border, as if we were the candidate. These were our last weeks to turn out the vote. Mm-hmm. We cannot let the candidates do it. And all, you know, everything from city council to the presidency, people have to vote for people who have good positions on immigration, human rights, women's policies, women's rights, and the differently abled. We have a responsibility, those that are of us that are healthy and can do that. So, and that's been our message since we started, is el voto es tu voz, no lo pierdes, no lo abuses, you know. Your vote is your voice. And then Laura is always does our closings for these events.
Oh, no, the only thing I have to say is thank you. I thought to all the panelists, I thought they were great. A lot of good information and a lot of inspiration too. Thank you to Hector also for attending and giving his presentation and for remembering me. And I just want to announce that we're having our next panel on the 14th. And it's going to be on the militarization of the border, and it's going to be organized by Pedro Rios. It's the 14th, am I right, Pedro?
Yes, that's correct. On the 14th at 4 p.m. Pacific time. See you there.
Okay, yeah, we'll see you there. Thank you all. Bye.
Gracias.
Thanks, everybody.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Mucho gusto en conocer a todos.
Y todas.
Gracias, hasta luego.